Schneid guy.
So now we're going to talk about the anterior pituitary hormone prolactin. So the effects of prolactin are pretty limited. Primarily, the milk production effect is where prolactin gets its name because it promotes lactation. So there is an important effect of prolactin on breast tissue to increase the production of milk. There's also an effect on the hypothalamus to suppress GnRH, that's gonadotropin releasing hormone, which then causes an effect to decrease gonadotropins, which ultimately then affects the gonads and reproductive function. This is why women who breastfeed and have a sustained increase in prolactin have reduced fertility, and why people who have excess prolactin end up with decreased reproductive function. Also, you can appreciate the milk production effect. That's only supposed to happen during breastfeeding. So in men and women, increased prolactin levels to pathologically high amounts can lead to something called galactorrhea, which is inappropriate milk production. So those are examples of when prolactin is excessively high, and it can cause these sorts of problems in an exaggerated way. And the receptor for prolactin is very similar to the growth hormone receptor. It's enzyme linked, that is sort of like an RTK, but a little bit different. And that's how it exerts its effects that we discussed on milk production and GnRH. In terms of the feedback control, we have the hypothalamus shown here, anterior pituitary lactotrophs, and then the breast tissue affecting for milk production, and then we have some feedback with a hungry baby, crying and suckling, which we'll discuss right now. We can see that when a baby's hungry and there's crying and breastfeeding, that then inhibits dopamine. Remember, dopamine is the primary controller of prolactin, so I disinhibit dopamine. Now the lactotrophs increase the release of prolactin, so we can write in prolactin right here. And as that hormone effect on breast tissue is exerted, we increase milk production, which is important for feeding the baby for breastfeeding. Keep in mind that we need oxytocin, which is the posterior pituitary hormone, for the contraction of the breast smooth muscle and to expel the milk. So we have a milk production hormone, prolactin, and the oxytocin's involved in ejecting the milk. There's also an important effect of estrogen, which is a sex steroid hormone, on this process. You can see here estrogen has a positive influence on the lactotrophs and promotes prolactin release, which is helpful. But also estrogen has an inhibitory effect on the effect of prolactin on milk production at this level right here. So it seems a little odd that estrogen would be promoting prolactin release, but then inhibiting its effects. And the idea is that during pregnancy, when estrogen levels are very high, and you have a very high level of prolactin, think of it as you're priming the breast, getting it ready for breastfeeding, but it's not quite time yet because the baby hasn't been born. When you're in the postpartum period and the estrogen levels fall and you lose that inhibition on the milk production effect of prolactin, now prolactin levels that have been very high and the milk production capabilities are there, you can now have breastfeeding occur and you can go through this feedback system, and it doesn't really matter that estrogen's not around anymore as much to have that effect. So think of the estrogen in this case as getting things ready for when you need to have this breastfeeding feedback loop occur.